We are going to discuss the different theories of social change, starting with an attempt to understand the meaning of social change or what social change can be in sociological terms. Before we go into sociology as such, before we delve deep into social theories, let us look around our real and individual lives. And what do we find there? We find change taking place everywhere, almost every moment of our life, since change is an essential and inevitable part of life, its only certainty. But sometimes these changes may bring alterations in the fundamentals of our life. Sometimes such changes may hardly touch the peripheries of our lives. But nonetheless, changes are always there. Sometimes changes may come about as a result of direct, conscious, deliberate attempt, like the invention of steam engines, or much earlier, a more fundamental change might have come about through some accidental discoveries like the discovery of fire. Or sometimes it may come as an unanticipated or unexpected spin off from some other development in society. Consider, for example, the use of mobile telephones or internet to organize a large number of people, as we have found in various mass movements in India and also abroad in recent times. But it must be remembered at all times that changes never take place in vacuum. Changes always take place in a social setting. But that doesn't make every possible change to be a social change. Not every possible change in society results in a social change. It may sound some kind of a theoretical hair splitting, some kind of playing with the words, but we'd get to the meaning of it when we differentiate changes in society from social change. If we consider what doesn't constitute social change, what do constitute social change. With that aim in mind, we'll first consider what may not be social changes. First of all, single events whose impact affects a single individual or a very small number of people may not constitute a social change. Secondly, events which leave out the largest majority of the people also do not constitute a social change. Thirdly, routine changes, everyday routine changes needed and required for the normal functioning of a social organization do not constitute a social change. Then, what on the positive side constitute or may constitute or may be called, may be labeled as social changes? Following the logic of the earlier exclusion, we may call such changes to be social changes which have been brought about by a collectivity, by a large number of people, or which affect a large number of people, or both. That means brought about by a large number of people and affecting a large number of people. That definitely is a kind of social change. Secondly, when there is a transformation in the structural or cultural elements of social organization that goes much deeper beneath the surface. Not some cosmetic change, not some cosmetic tinkering at the superficial level, but changes which go much deeper. That would also be some social changes. Social changes, moreover, observable to others and verifiable by others. Fourthly, such changes should be more than transient, more than ephemeral, which means the effect must stay over for a longer period of time, not just for a day or a week or a month. And finally, those changes are social changes which in one way or the other affects the course of history of a particular society. So as we have eliminated a few, we have also come to discover some positive sides of defining social change, and if we come to some kind of a conclusion from this, those who have eliminated and those who have counted in, then obviously social changes are about collectivities, concerning collectivities, brought about by collectivities, are not transient, have effects which go deeper than the surface, are not just perceived by a few but observable by others, even by others who are not affected by the change. They are empirically verifiable, and they in one way or the other changes the course of social history. Social change is a reality which every sociologist had to contend with. As we will see later on, maybe in course of our future discussion, that sociologists were, or the students of society, were not very much interested in social changes. But we found a very serious interest in delineating, in describing, in explaining social change from 19th century onwards in Europe. Because by that time, the European society had changed fundamentally. We have been talking about Industrial Revolution. The time of Industrial Revolution starts from 1730s, that is almost the middle of the 18th century. So over the century, from the middle of the 18th to the middle of the 19th, the Industrial Revolution did bring about so many fundamental changes in the mode of production, in the relations of production, in the habitat, in culture, in literature, in music, and even in the form of property, replacing land by capital, that sociologists and social historians in Europe became interested in change and interested in explaining change. And from then onwards, we found a number of very important thinkers trying to explain why change did take place in Europe, and some of them also trying to explain why changes did not take place elsewhere. But they are mainly following their own ideas and mainly providing their own philosophical interpretations of some historical happenings. That we can discuss in detail when we come to individual theories of social change. For now, or at least at this stage, we will consider two of the leading definitions of social change in present day sociology. The first one is from Guy Rocher. Guy Rocher, in his A General Introduction to Sociology, a theoretical perspective, has defined social change thus, and please allow me to quote: "Social change is every observable transformation over time, which affects in a way that is not provisional or ephemeral the structure or the functioning of the social organization of a given collectivity and which modifies the course of its history. A very comprehensive definition which covers every possible dimension of social change. Rocher had dealt with all the elements, its time, the way it affects, the number of persons such change affects, and its impact on the course of history. The second one is from Wilbert Moore. Wilbert Moore, according to Wilbert Moore, as you can find in his excellent article in the International Encyclopedia of the Social Sciences, Moore defines thus, and I quote, "Social change is a significant alteration of social structures, that is, of patterns of social action and interaction, including consequences and manifestations of such structures embodied in norms, values, and cultural products and symbols." A bit different from the one given by Guy Rocher, Moore is more emphasizing on the areas in which changes can be visible, areas which get affected by changes like values, the cultural products and symbols via changes in social structure. But both of them have concentrated on the observable and the verifiable elements of social change. We are often confused, even if we define social change thus, we are often confused by the presence of three terms having almost similar connotation in sociology, and all of them dealing with some kind of transformation. One is social evolution, the other is revolution, and the third one is the one we are presently dealing with, social change. Are they different? Can you relate them to each other? Can you differentiate the three of them on any single ground? These are important questions, because unless you do that, we may be using them, those terms, evolution, revolution, and change, interchangeably, which often a layman would do. But they are not to be used interchangeably, or they can't be used interchangeably. Social change is usually, the term social change is usually taken as a generic term, which includes both revolution as well as evolution. But according to some other sociologists, social change can be a particular kind of transformation, not a generic kind of transformation which includes other transformations, but a particular kind, a particular type of transformation alongside social evolution and revolution. Basically, the major element which differentiates the three, which separates evolution from change and change from evolution, is time. Evolution takes place over a long period of time, whereas social change takes place over a much shorter period of time. And revolutions, in case of revolutions, we'll go into that presently, but revolutions can be considered as social evolutions compressed in time. The time frame of social evolutions, if it is compressed into a much smaller, much denser time, that's revolution. Now let's see each of them separately. Social evolutions take place over a long period of time, signifying transformations in all spheres of social organization and social life. In all spheres. It includes or is built up around many incidents and dimensions of social change. So, social evolution has a long-term perspective to it, as well as it spreads all over the society, touching every nook and corner, touching every possible individual life. And a series of social changes taken together may lead to a longer term social evolution. Social changes, on the other hand, refer to observable transformatory phenomenon in some parts of social organization or some areas of social life that have taken place over a shorter time period. In some part of social life for a shorter time period, which has taken place over a shorter time period, but which definitely have a fundamental consequence, a fundamental transformatory consequence. We may be reminded of the banning of the practice of sati, spearheaded by Sri Ram Mohan Roy. That was a very important social change, but it concerned only the life of those who have been recently been widowed. It concerned only the Hindu society, but it did have a much deeper effect on the status of women. So that is a kind of example of social change. Revolutions take place over a very short period of time. And like evolutions, revolutions to bring about fundamental transformations in all spheres of life. But the entire time frame is compressed. Time becomes denser than or as compared to evolutionary change. Just think of the 1917 Russian Revolution. John Reed has described it as 10 days that shook the world. 10 days is definitely not a very long period of time. But those 10 days not only shook the world, but totally transformed the Russian society into a new, totally new kind of society which the world hasn't seen before. So that's the beauty of the revolution, that it brings about changes almost a blink of an eye. And revolutions also involve the question of violence. It may involve violence. Though we have talked about peaceful revolutions, if by revolutions we mean fundamental transformations, and revolutions do not have to have an element of violence in it, but it must be said that they bring in fundamental transformations in a short period of time. So, we come almost to the final point of our discussion of this particular area, that we are trying to understand what may be social changes. We are trying to understand what we encounter every day, at every moment of our life, but may not understand them to be changes, or may understand them to be changes after some time. Sociology is very much concerned with social changes, not because they are changes, but because of the consequences on society, consequences which may spread over a larger area and may cover a larger period of time, consequences which may not be felt right now or may be felt much later on. Computers came into use on a large scale from 1960s, even in the West. Prior to that, the use of computers were limited mainly and almost solely to the areas of military technology and used only by defense personnel. But from 1960s till we came to the end of the 20th century, or this 2013 is not a long time. 45, 50 years or 55 years, which definitely is a long time compared to the human history or the history of human civilization. But who can deny that the use of a mechanical device, a computer, has brought about serious, fundamental, all transforming changes in our economic, technological, social, cultural, and even individual lives. So that is change we are talking about. Change which affects society for good or for worse, but no society or no individual can be free from any kind of change. In a short manner, we are trying to change our life for the better. Changes came as part of that endeavor. Some of them had been positive in result, some of them had been welcomed by human societies, and some of them might have been negative in nature, and humans have tried to forget them, put them out of consideration, and replace them, rectify them, modify them with a change for the better. But as I have started my discussion today, that change, as Marx said, is the only thing constant in life.